Hey friends, this is a start of a long SvelteKit series, so I hope you're excited as I am about learning SvelteKit. So what is SvelteKit? SvelteKit is the Swiss Army knife of JavaScript frameworks. SvelteKit is basically a meta framework built on top of Svelte for building rich web apps. But it's easier to honestly think of it as a backend framework that uses Svelte as the component framework. First, let's have a look at the SvelteKit landing page. So it's fast, fun, and flexible. SvelteKit is powered by Vite, and speed is baked into every crevice. It's fast setup, fast development, fast builds because it has live reload. So if we can see here is Vite. SvelteKit uses Vite for the server and server-side rendering, hot module replacement, so when you make a change to your CSS or JavaScript, it's going to update immediately in your browser. SvelteKit is fun. No more wasted days figuring out bundler configurations, routing, server-side rendering, CSP, TypeScript, deployment settings, and all other boring stuff. Code with joy. SvelteKit is also flexible. Most JavaScript frameworks force you into something like static site generation or being a SPA or server-side rendering, but you can do everything with SvelteKit. You can have a single-page application, a multi-page application, server-side rendering, static site generation in a single app. And I'm going to show you more about it later. And if you don't trust me, the best quote is from Scott Tolinsky. What Svelte allows us to do is to write code. How profound is that? But jokes aside, SvelteKit is built on top of Svelte. If you don't know about Svelte, I have an entire series where I teach you Svelte through JavaScript if you're interested in that. And if you already didn't know, Svelte is a UI framework that uses a compiler to let you write breathtakingly concise components that do minimal work in the browser. The best thing about Svelte is that you can use the languages you already know, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's a love letter to web development. Another amazing thing about SvelteKit is that you can deploy it anywhere. You can pre-render your sites, you can run it on a node server, you can deploy it to Vercel, Netlify, Dino if you want, thanks to SvelteKit adapters. SvelteKit is basically a machine that turns a request into a response. So you're not tied to something like just Node.js, and you can deploy it anywhere. If you're familiar with other JavaScript frameworks, SvelteKit is to Svelte what Next.js or Remix is to React. But philosophically, SvelteKit is closer to Remix, where it encourages you to use the web platform and progressive enhancement to build more resilient sites. This might not mean anything to you right now, but don't worry, we're going to go through everything and I'm going to show you examples what makes SvelteKit great, so don't worry if you're lost or you don't understand everything, because you're going to dive deep into those things later. SvelteKit blurs the line between the frontend and the backend. It makes the integration between them seamless since it has control over both, which means you can start working on your project and not suffer from decision fatigue since it's opinionated in the right way. You can use SvelteKit, for example, to create an API just like you can with Express, which you can use inside your application, but you can also expose it to the world, and if you want to do that, you need to set up CORS and all that fun stuff. But let me just quickly show you what I mean. So here I have a simple plus server TS file, and this really isn't important right now, but I just want to show you how simple it is to make an endpoint. So for example, here I want to fetch a list of posts from a database, so we can pretend that I'm making here a database call, and I'm going to return posts with just an array of objects, and then I'm going to use this JSON helper from SvelteKit to return the post, so I don't have to write my own response headers and etc. And if we look at the sidebar, so let me just go here, and I can reveal in Explorer view. So you can see I created an API folder, which is not convention. You can name this whatever you want, like banana, etc. So I created API, post, and then I created this server file. And just like that, I can go to localhost 5173/API, the folder I created, /post, and that's it. Now I can use this API inside my app or expose it to the world. And that's how simple it is in SvelteKit. This is cool and everything, but where SvelteKit shines is when it comes to data fetching for your pages, because of how seamless the integration is between the backend and the frontend. And it gives you type safety, so you don't even need something like TRPC. And let me show you what I mean. So here I have a SvelteKit project, and I'm just going to fetch a post from the database. Again, we're going to pretend that this is some post. So here I have another interesting file, plus page server TS. And this is similar to our own endpoint before, but this is a page endpoint. So this is exclusively responsible for fetching some data from the file system or database for your page. So you can see here we have this load function, and that's really not important for now. So you can again pretend that you're fetching something from the database. You're going to get the post, the slug, the content. So you can pretend this is some content management system, and it's simple as just returning the data from the load function. And now in our page where I have here data, we get type safety for free because SvelteKit generates the types behind the scenes for us. So if I hover over data, we can see, here is data, here is the post, etc. And now when you do whatever in your template or here, you can see you get great auto-completion. But don't worry if you're scared of TypeScript or don't know TypeScript, you can use JSDoc with regular JavaScript so you can also get great types. And let me show you an example of that. If I go to the SvelteKit documentation, for example, I'm just going to zoom out so I can get the entire view. And here you have this handy toggle. So for example, let's look at an example here. So here it's importing this type, whatever, but you're like, okay, I don't use JavaScript. I don't use TypeScript, that is, I just use JavaScript. So you can just toggle that and it's going to give you the JSDoc version. So you can just paste it over. This is how you learn what a type is and you can go on your way. But yeah, I prefer TypeScript. So let me just go back here. And again, now you get the data from the server. How awesome is that and easy? SvelteKit has a strong emphasis on convention over configuration. SvelteKit sparks joy because it doesn't get in your way, so you can start hacking at your idea and not spend hours configuring things. I mentioned how SvelteKit is a Vite plugin, but that's an oversimplification and sounds like a weekend project considering the problem it solves. So here is the big question. Why would you use SvelteKit? What is wrong with Svelte? There's nothing wrong with Svelte. Svelte is a separate project and you can implement your own routing and etc. There's packages for that, so you can do whatever you want, and they're always going to be separate projects. So if you're thinking that SvelteKit somehow replaces Svelte, that's false. It's just the recommended way to build Svelte apps because of all of these things. So what is the problem that SvelteKit solves? Well, SvelteKit does routing for you. So you have file-based routing. It solves server-side rendering. It solves data fetching, as we've seen before. The best part, it's zero config, so it configures ESLint, Prettier, TypeScript, testing with Playwright and vtest out of the box. So basically, when you scaffold a SvelteKit project, you get questions in the CLI and you can pick whatever you want from these options and it's going to be configured for you. But of course, zero configuration doesn't mean no configuration, so you can configure it however you want. This is a more spooky sounding one. What does code splitting mean? Well, basically, SvelteKit is smart enough that it knows the data for each page, so it knows what to load in terms of CSS and JavaScript for every page. So an awesome thing in SvelteKit is you can get preloading. So when you hover over a link, it's already going to start downloading data for the next page. And those precious milliseconds are going to be a huge gain in terms of perceived performance. SvelteKit also handles environment variables for you. And this just goes beyond just being able to import environment variables because it's going to save you when you, for example, try to import some secret environment variables on the client. It's going to be like, hey, you can't do that. And that's going to be the end of the story. So SvelteKit is going to try its best to set you up for success. And also, unlike other frameworks, SvelteKit has configurable rendering. You can have server-side rendering, static side generation and client side rendering in the same application. So for example, your marketing pages can be statically generated, your app can use server-side rendering, and you can even disable server-side rendering and disable client-side navigation if you want. Basically, once your first page loads, it uses server-side rendering because server-side rendering is faster and better for SEO. So if that's something you need, you can just enable it and you don't have to just make a single choice. And also the best part of it, it configures deployment for you, so you don't have to think about that. You don't have to think about optimized bundle sizes and etc. It just works. SvelteKit is the best of both worlds. It's server-side rendering with client-side navigation. What does that mean? So here in the example where we fetched our post, in a regular single-page application, this would just be some JavaScript shell, and we really wouldn't have the HTML in our source, which would be bad for SEO. While the Google search engine can parse JavaScript, it shouldn't be relied upon because it takes compute, so you really can't rely on that for SEO. So if I go, for example, here and say page source, we can see our HTML is right here. So this is really great for SEO, and we can see some interesting things here. So what is this? Basically, this is responsible for hydration, but it also loads the client-side router. And what does that really mean? Basically, the first time you load a page in SvelteKit, it's going to server-side render it. So it's going to give you the data from the server, and then after that it basically becomes a single page application, so you retain that awesome user experience using a single page application. This wasn't using client-side routing. When we would navigate from link to link here, our page here would refresh, but that's not the case with SvelteKit because the router kicks in. So for example, if I go to app, you're going to see everything is going to stay smooth and there is no page reload. And as I said, most frameworks make you decide between server-side rendering or pre-rendering everything, but SvelteKit lets you choose what method you want on a per page basis. I also have a handy diagram here to show you how a SPA works basically, if you're used to that. So basically, when you're using a SPA, you make a round trip because first all your JavaScript has to load before you can even request data from the server. So you have the server, it takes a request, index.html, and this downloads some shell where it just uses JavaScript to populate content and change things on the page. So then you have a GET request for the API post, and then you can get your post and show them on the page. But with server-side rendering, and the benefit of this is that you do this all in one take. So before you even show the page, you can just say get API post, and then you just get the data in the index.html or whatever. And then you might be asking, but okay, what if this takes some time to get the data? And the answer is then you have a problem with your infrastructure or caching, which is great because it's more easily solvable than just using a SPA and relying on JavaScript. So to repeat, SvelteKit apps are server-side rendered by default for speed and SEO, so search engine optimization, but once the page is loaded, the client-side router kicks in, which makes your app feel like a SPA to avoid reloading the page between page navigation. So let me just quickly show you how awesome it is to be able to set what rendering mode you want on a per page basis or even for the entire site. So here in my project, in the root layout, I have this plus layout TS file, and if you wanted, you can pre-render the entire page. So you can set here pre-render true, and then you can change this for individual pages. So this would override it, but I'm going to comment this out and I'm going to show you, for example, if I go to the about, for example, I want to pre-render this or whatever, and here I have this about folder. Nothing special. Here is the file with some styles and HTML. So I can go here and then I can say pre-render is true. So it's going to pre-render it. And then I can even disable the client-side router. So I get 0 JavaScript. And this isn't going to work in development. So you need to build your page. So I'm going to say npm run build and I'm going to run preview. This is going to take a second. And let me just quickly show you how awesome this is. So for example, here is a special generated SvelteKit folder. So you can see here in the output, pre-rendered, you can go to pages here, and here is the about. So this is just going to compute in advance the data you need for the page. And as you can see, there is no JavaScript here. So for example, I'm in the build, so you can just go to 4173, and then let's just view source, and you're going to see it's the same thing. So there is really no JavaScript here, which is really awesome if that's what you want. So right now, even the router from the SvelteKit isn't loaded. So when we navigate to home, our page is going to do a hard refresh because the client-side router hasn't kicked in yet. So for example, if we go from about now to home, you can see how it does a hard refresh. But for example, now since we're on home, if we go back to about, it's still going to be pre-rendered everything, but now it's going to use the client-side routing. So you can see how awesome this is. So here's another example where this might be useful. So if I go to app here, let me just go to the sidebar. I'm just going to close this. And here is my app. So here, let me just uncomment. So here we're fetching, actually, let me just open the development. npm run dev. And go back to that. And of course, the URL is different. Say 5173. So here's the internal error. And why is that? Remember how I said that your components run on the server and client? So for example, if we continue using the client router, I go to home, back to app is going to work because this is just in the context of the browser. But if I refresh the page, so someone visits your page, for example, and this is going to run on the server, and what do you do now? There's a couple of things you can do, but again, we can just change the rendering mode. So here in our app, we can go to page TS and we can just disable server-side rendering. And how awesome is this? And we did on a per page basis. This is just amazing to me. And completely mind-blowing since most JavaScript frameworks force you into using server-side rendering or pre-rendering everything. SvelteKit uses the web platform, but what does that really mean? one thing I love the most about Svelte, for example, links. You don't have some weird wrapper for links because it's just regular HTML. As you can see here in the navigation, I didn't have to import some weird component or whatever else, I just wrote regular HTML. But what does it really mean to use the web platform? Let's have an example. If we go to the login, so let's see how simple it is working with forms in SvelteKit. Again, if I go here to the example, there is no weird component I had to import, etc. I'm just using the form. And this is the beauty of SvelteKit, because you're going to spend more time on MDN learning about the web platform than some weird abstraction that's only useful inside SvelteKit. And SvelteKit uses the web platform, meaning you're not learning some framework-specific abstraction, but using web standards like the fetch API, the request and response object, headers, form data, cookies, and etc. So you're not going to read the Svelte docs on some of these things. You're going to read about and learn about the fetch API, which is transferable knowledge. You might have forgotten how forms work if you use traditional JavaScript frameworks over the years, right? So here I have this interesting action, which really isn't some weird SvelteKit thing. It's just a URL, right? And this action points to something awesome, this plus page server TS, which exports these actions. And actions, basically, you can just define a method you want to run when you run something from the form. And here on this object, you can get access to the request, cookies, you can do whatever. So question, for example, how do you get data from the form? Well, of course, using the web platform and using the form data. So you can go to MDN and you can see, okay, new form data, and you just pass the form and you get the form data. So here on this page, I can, for example, say test 1, 2, 3, 4, and before I submit, let me just open the terminal. Remember, this is going to run on the server, so here is where you can set all your cookies, and SvelteKit also exposes a nice API for the cookies, so you don't have to import your package and etc. So here, so we can get the credentials, we can just say data get, because remember, this is just the web API for how to get data from a form. You can get the name, password, and then you're going to console log it out or do whatever you want. So now when I say login, you're going to see name, test, and password 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's how easy it is to work with forms in SvelteKit. SvelteKit apps are more resilient because they use progressive enhancement. Your SvelteKit apps works before JavaScript. If you haven't noticed, in this example, we're not even using JavaScript. Remember how we typed in test 1, 2, 3, 4, and pay attention to the browser because this is going to reload the default form behavior, right? You can use progressive enhancement with SvelteKit if you want to progressively enhance the user experience. And this is really simple. So here you can enable this Svelte action enhance, and you can just go here, you can say use, enhance, and basically when JavaScript is available on the page, it's going to use it. So instead of disabling the default form behavior and implementing what the browser does yourself, SvelteKit really makes it simple to use the web platform and progressively enhance the user experience when JavaScript is available on the page. So if you're curious, this basically does the equivalent of if you weren't using this, you would be doing something like on submit, and then you would be like handle submit, and then you would have to go here in your JavaScript function handle submit. You would get the event, and then you have to say prevent default. And then you would have to fetch, etc. But notice there is not a single fetch here because SvelteKit does all of it for you. So let me just remove this and let me just show you that this is true. I'm going to remove this. So we just had to use enhance. Let me just save it. I'm going to open the terminal again. And now when I go here, I'm going to say test 1, 2, 3, 4. And notice how we're not going to get a refresh here. We're just going to say login. And now we're using JavaScript. And how great is this? We talked about this briefly, but SvelteKit runs where JavaScript runs. SvelteKit by default uses the Node.js adapter, but it can run anywhere where JavaScript can run, requiring zero configuration thanks to adapters. You can even write your own adapter, but one of the supported environments are Cloudflare pages, Netlify, Vercel, Node.js, where you can even pre-render your entire page using the static adapter. And there's even community adapters for things like Dino and etc. But also keep in mind, if you're going to run SvelteKit in an environment that is not Node.js and you're trying to use Node.js file system API, for example, that's not going to work. So here we can see in the documentation here the adapter. So supported environments, Cloudflare pages, Netlify, Vercel. And this is really simple as that. So for example, if you want to deploy to Vercel, you just point it to your GitHub repository and that's it. Basically, it's going to work. Or you can create a Node version, and there's many other things you can do. You can export your own custom server using WebSockets and etc. if you need that. So here is the adapter static. So you have community adapters. If you go here, there's Dino and other ones like Bun, I think. So yeah, basically this is very interesting. SvelteKit makes the deployment story really easy. Let me also briefly mention that SvelteKit is also great for making component libraries. So you can package and publish your packages on NPM, and SvelteKit helps you create and publish packages if you're working on component libraries using Svelte package. So a component library is similar to a SvelteKit app, but the root is going to be inside source_lib, and when you run Svelte package, it's going to do everything for you, and you can publish it directly to NPM. So you can see here is the packaging, and if you're a library author or maintainer, SvelteKit also makes this process really simple. Alright friends, so I hope you're excited about SvelteKit and want to learn more, and remember, SvelteKit is made for everyone. SvelteKit is an open source project governed by Rich Harris and a team of core contributors. The development is funded by the Open Collective and Vercel, but it's not governed by a corporation whose goals are ambitious and unclear. The future of SvelteKit is bright, and I hope you give it a try, but be warned, in case you do, you might not want to use anything else, and side effects include a permanent grin on your face. Alright, so if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you want to support me, you can find my Patreon in the description. So thank you for watching, and catch you in the next one. Peace!